Hey everyone, welcome to the Food from Mzansi Minecraft world. It's an exciting gamification project that we started a few months ago to try and create a greater understanding of the agricultural value chain and thereby food security, especially amongst our younger audience. I'm Ivor Price. I'm the co-founder and editor-in-chief of Food from Mzansi. And with me on screen, I've got two very special gentlemen. The one is Agri-tech. He's the co-founder of an agri-tech called Addergen. And also Xavier, who came out on tops. He's the winner of the Food from Mzansi Minecraft World. What can I call it? Trial initiative before it goes live. Gentlemen, thank you for joining us.
Nice to be here. Thanks, Ivor.
Thanks, Ivor. It's a pleasure to be here.
Efge, maybe before we delve into it, it's been the year of agri-tech, and I think 2013 will be even bigger. Gamification as well. Is that something that excites you?
Well, there's two parts to the gamification. There's so as long as it keeps the people engaged and motivated to get more out of what they're busy with, I think there's definitely scope for that. That's the one side. The other side, because from the ag-tech point of view, we also work with user interfaces. We try to make it as easy and as friendly as possible for the users to use technology. And there's an element of gamification in that as well, just to pull their attention and keep them engaged with the data they're seeing, and as well to make real world changes on the other side. So definitely, this is an exciting project, and the outcome, obviously we can explore that, but it's there's a lot of questions and some comments I have, which is definitely going to be adding value to the project going forward.
Are you a gamer?
I used to game, and then I started a company. There's no more time for gaming left.
Well, I'm not a gamer myself, so that makes it super exciting to kind of just go into it fresh. I know, Xavier, you obviously a gamer. You came out tops. Minecraft, agriculture, is that a world you always knew that existed?
Yeah, so there's quite a community around Minecraft and agriculture specifically. I mean, it is divided. There are some people more interested in architecture, but generally you do need to utilize farming to survive in Minecraft. And pretty much every player has to do an element of farming in some scale. In my experience, I've generally concentrated more on the farming. So this initiative for me was great. I managed to build a lot of things I don't get to build often. So yeah, farming is essential to Minecraft. You can't really play it without farming some sort of resource.
Now, the project leader, Gareth Davies, tells me you've really done exceptional work. Take us into it. Give us that sneak preview. Efge, you're welcome to chip in and to say if you have, speak up if you have any questions or comments. I'd love to hear from you too. Over to you, Xavier.
Okay, great. So Gareth, if you want to follow me, we can get started here quickly. So we're going to start here. And one of the major concerns with farming is labor. And for that, I tried to make it as realistic as possible. And one of the challenges in South Africa right now is that much of our labor is from the lower LSMs. And to do that, I built a small township. But the difference with this township is there's a few sustenance farmers here. So for example, on this end here, we've got a tiny chicken farm that would produce enough eggs for this farmer here, as well as some people around the township. As well as that, we've got a wheat farmer here. And generally, this township relied on fishing more than, any labor specifically. They also provided the farm hands for the sugarcane farm here, which is a massive initiative from Frontier Foods. So Frontier Foods was basically a holding company I kind of designed for the Minecraft server. And the idea behind Frontier Foods is small scale farms that would supply the local area specifically. So a lot of, well, we only got to build the one, but this small scale farm has, you'll see it later on, sugarcane and a few other crops that would supply a small city or small town. And I felt that would be a lot more sustainable because your traveling costs and your transport to move the goods to the market are a lot cheaper than sending it to a national market or something like that. Okay, so
Xavier, in many ways, you're kind of mirroring what's happening in the real world. We see a lot of these initiatives.
Yeah, so I wanted to try and build as much of the real world as it stands currently, and then eventually try to create solutions to those challenges. For example, Frontier Foods later on would try and build a housing project to house the laborers from the township, and then try to, you know, eradicate the township living, which would be a lot better for, I think, everyone. And it's something we need to address in South Africa as well. Sorry, this warehouse wasn't finished, but this was the Frontier warehouse where all the grains and things would have been stored. And then we've got our wheat farm here. The wheat farm here is basically non-irrigated, and this relies on actual rainfall in the game to grow. So we're quite lucky right now to get some rainfall, but generally it does take much longer than an irrigated farm. And that was one of the challenges I tried to work with, trying to understand how a non-irrigated farm going back like 2,000 years would have worked, where they didn't use much irrigation.
Hold up there for a second. Hold up there for a second. This is absolutely incredible. I mean, I wish we could do with some rain here in Paarl today, where I'm at. Your initial thoughts?
First, the question which just came up, I just wrote this down, is that if you, I mean, what you're trying to do is maybe the real world. Well, let's just say you did not, like you just got laborers in and didn't care for them and didn't make sure that they've got a sustainable supply chain feeding them. What would have happened in the game? Just to give us an idea of how realistic is this, because games can be fictional and can be go all over the place and you can do whatever you want, but does the game allow you to do that, or are you going to have some hiccups going forward?
You are going to have some hiccups. Generally, you do need to worry about welfare in this game. And Gareth, sorry, I'm going to go back to the township quickly. So in this essence, I mean, you're going to have to get real people to work the farm. And by real people, I mean fellow gamers. And this is kind of what they call role play gaming. And if you look, Gareth, if you want to go inside the shack and just give them a look of what that looks like. So I've tried to make it as realistic as possible. And generally, any role play gamer is not going to be happy with that. Plus, if Gareth, if we go back to the wheat farm, this wheat farm here, basically, it takes a day in game. And there's real sleep cycles, real hunger levels, etc., that you need to contend with while working as well. So if you're working in the field under the sun the entire day, your hunger level depletes at a rapid rate. So, you know, the people that are kind of working on these farms are not going to be in the best of moods because it does take quite a bit of time in real life. I think in real life, this farm takes about 25 minutes to harvest, and then another 20 minutes to plant seeds. And then you have to wait for the rain, which can be 2 or 3 days, sometimes longer. So there's a lot of frustration from real world players that would be playing in a role play if you were on a harvesting level. In my case, I was doing the harvesting, the planting, the building, everything on my own. So that was extremely frustrating, and my character in game would get hungry very often. So yeah, I hope that kind of answers your question there.
It does, and it also I think gives myself and the audience a very good idea of that this game does hold water when it comes to people saying, well, it's just a game, it's not real world. It just takes a lot of the real world into account. So just kudos for the game, so, as well as seeing you enduring the frustrations of real life.
Yeah, so let me show you guys quickly how realistic it is, sort of. I'm not too familiar with real life wheat farming. This is kind of primitive the way they've done it. But basically, you would need to chop out or harvest your wheat, and then you're left with the bare ground like that. I don't know if you guys can see it there. And then you see the wheat and the seed come up, and then you just plant a new seed, and that's what it looks like. Then you have to wait for that to grow, and that can take in game anywhere between a day or 2 days, depending on whether it's irrigated, whether there's enough sunlight, and all the real life variables that you have to contend with in real farming. Luckily, there's no pests, but I mean, you do get creatures that can destroy your crops in here at night. Okay, so you guys happy with that one? Can we move on to the potato farm, perhaps?
Show us the potatoes, man.
Okay, so for the potato farm, again, with this, each farm didn't need a farmhouse, etc., because it all belonged to one corporate company, and all the grains and harvests were going to be contained in a warehouse. So there was no need to actually, build a farmhouse for each farm. The potato farm, I tried to get it as realistic as possible, but these are all micro scale farms. So they aren't the biggest farms. And yeah, it's pretty much like real potatoes. They grow underground. And you got to harvest them within 2 or 3 days, or they do go off. And you do have a issue where when you're harvesting, some of the crops will be rotten already. So those are all real life challenges in the game that I assume potato farmers also have. With potato being one of the major crops in South Africa, it's also one of the most challenging. And the game also kind of translates that. To keep the potatoes safe, we used underground stone storage. And this is just to keep it temporarily until it reaches the main market.
Xavier, with regards to the real market, of course, a lot of the farmers on my side, it's a big thing, which is a big challenge for the commercial farmers now, is the profitability. Tell us a bit more about the how do you determine which crops to plant based on the price or what the need is, or is it profitable in the game as well to farm potatoes versus sugarcane? Like, just take us back through the economics of the game.
Okay, so you've got a few basic crops, and we'll go through a few of them through the tour. But potatoes and wheat are the most on demand. And the reason for that is potatoes are the easiest to cook in the game. They also produce quite a bit of hunger level. They can increase your fullness, so to speak. So it is one of the most valued crops in the game, and it's also one of the easier ones to cook. Whereas wheat, you need about 3 or 4 pieces of wheat in game to produce 1 loaf of bread, which, 1 loaf of bread doesn't go very far. Whereas potatoes, you can make baked potatoes in game next to a campfire. Let me show you how that works. So for me personally, a potato is about the most valuable crop in the game. So we're just going to go back to the township quickly. And I'm going to cook this potato for you guys to see. But in terms of profitability in the game, Minecraft doesn't really have a money system. So you're working on a barter trade system unless you choose to, like in some of the games I've played, we've used gold as the main monetary system. So I'm just going to cook these potatoes quickly. So from that one plant, I got about 4 potatoes.
And while you're busy cooking there, it's quite interesting for me that you storing the potatoes underground. Now in South Africa, it's not something most farmers do, but you check out Food for Africa, our sister publication. It's actually something that happens on the daily with many small-scale potato farmers. And most people don't know that potatoes can survive in something like -2 degrees underground, under the soil, with little to no damage. You'll see a bit of damage on the leaves, but the potato under the soil will be perfectly fine until it's ready to go to market.
Yeah, so essentially what I wanted to do further on in the game, but I didn't get the time because of the time frame of the trial, was, I don't know if you guys are familiar with the whole Netherlands style farming, where they farm inside these greenhouses, and that
Yes.
removes the need for pesticides, etc. So they grow potatoes in lower temperatures, and it seems to work very well for them, because a farm there for the same size that we have can produce 3 times what we produce on a farm in South Africa. So I think, Ivor, that's amazing stuff. If anyone can bring it to South Africa, it will really be sustainable. But, yeah,
But
we have to
listen,
wait and
people
see.
are going to play this game over December. There's a big holiday ahead, and we want to give them a sneak preview. So maybe if we can speed it up a little just to show them some of the other highlights. I see we've got 9 minutes
Sure.
on this call.
Okay, perfect. So we've pretty much gone over the potato farm. The next one, now Frontier Foods tried to do everything necessary to bake a cake, so to speak. So farms included potatoes, wheat, and eggs. Here we see a very micro dairy farm. There are quite a few cows on this, and the cows have like a free range field to graze in. Of course, I couldn't make it too realistic where they have multiple fields to grazing. So for now, it's just the one field. And as we can see here, there is a bit of an operation to milk the cows. This is not a meat farm per se, but it is also attached to a pig farm, which we'll see down here. And this is the pig farm that we have. This is primarily for meat. Okay. And as we can see, the pig farm is attached to this building here, which acts as Frontier Foods abattoir, which is not the nicest thing, but it is necessary in farming. I don't know too much about real life pig farming. Do any of you know about it? Does this look realistic?
FK, you are Bursian. What do you say?
I haven't. I don't think they take the pigs in a dungeon to slaughter them, but the slaughtering is not the nicest part, probably, about the pig farm. But it happens. But so it's. I can see it in the game. Let's say that.
Okay, so then there is a separate section for the pigs downstairs and a separate section for the cows upstairs. Meat happens to be the most nutritious in game, so it is the most valuable crop you can actually grow in Minecraft. Also, the fact that you have to wait quite a while for the cows to grow. Another aspect of Minecraft is building, and for that you do need some farms for wood. But between the wood, we also utilized the shade to grow mushrooms, as you can see, which is great for using with soups and things in game. So that's a little bit of something that I don't think I've seen in real life, where anyone's growing trees and mushrooms at the same time. Moving on, any questions from there so far?
I think a comment from my side is just it's very amusing to see how broad encompassing the whole game is. Like the trees with the mushroom underneath, that's the thing that mushrooms don't normally want to stand in the sun, and it's really cool to see the game accounting for that. There's one thing which Gareth showed me a while ago, and that was kind of like, which was fascinating, was the agri of the game, where you need to get supplies and someone needs to provide that. That was not something I actually even thought about, but that's such a real life thing. And the game also accounted for that, or someone needs to account for it. Otherwise, everyone in the game is going to be lagging in terms of tools.
Well, in this server, yeah. You had to kind of mine your own stuff. But to prevent players from getting frustrated, what I tried to do is create a supply store. So this was the supply store called Lumberjacks, and this would provide wood and tools and all the supplies you would need to get your farm started, instead of you going out and chopping trees yourself and starting up yourself. So this was an addition that Frontier Foods did, so that other players could be able to build their farms easier without going through the frustration of building their own tools physically. This was a lot easier. So they would trade potatoes for tools, for example, or milk for tools, or any crops that we didn't have. Okay, Gareth, I'm going to run back to the chicken farm to speed things up quickly. Okay, so chicken in-game, also one of the more valuable resources. And the nice thing about chickens is that they breed pretty much like real life, quite fast. And I'm just going to make a chicken here. There we go. So we've got I don't know if you can see it, Gareth. So that we've got a baby chicken now. It's just hatched. And as you can see, the eggs and the little hen houses there. The chicken farming in-game is more or less realistic. They also don't have the longest lifespans. And they do die easily with foxes and wolves in the area. So if you don't have good protection, like this farm has decent protection around it, including light sources, then wolves can sneak into your farm and kill your chickens, which is not the nicest thing. So that pretty much wraps up the Frontier Foods farms. There was meant to be a little bit more, including a rabbit farm, which is a livestock I think in South Africa is not very well utilized, but you can utilize it in game and it does produce meat as well at a rapid rate, similar to chickens. And then we have these. Yeah.
Sorry to interrupt you there. We're going to have to wrap up. FG in 30 seconds. Your thoughts?
I think Xavier said that he's not from the farm, he's a city boy, but I have to say, I think you kind of like took it all together quite well and you accommodated for a lot. So I think if I were to put you on a farm, it might be a real world shock, but I think your head has been wrapped around a lot of the aspects farmers need to take into account, which is not normal coming from, I would say, theoretical points. So well done. I'm very impressed with just the scale and everything you've built up to accommodate for farming.
Okay, yeah, thank you guys.
Likewise, Xavier, I have to say it's been a successful test run and congratulations. We're now going to open it up to a group of gamers. And as they can see here, they're going to have to deal with various challenges from farming to the processing to logistics. And we're inviting all players in the agri sector, whether you can farm or not, to come join us here on the Food from Mzansi Minecraft world. Xavier, if you want to give potential gamers one big tip, what would that be?
Well, try to think of the game as a realistic thing. It is fun. There are some unrealistic elements as well, but always try to think of the game as a realistic thing that you can learn from. I gotta say, being a city boy, I don't get much experience with farming. But this initiative from Food Farm in Mzansi really taught me a lot more about farming that I didn't know. I've played Minecraft before, farming, but not at the scale of what we did here, trying to make realistic farms. So it was a great learning experience. So treat things realistically and you'll learn a lot.
Fantastic. All the best, gentlemen. Let's see how it plays out.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you.